Good morning, everyone. It is a very timely summit. As we are talking here, this huge disaster is unfolding in Thessaly, probably about 150 to 200 kilometers from where you are. This is a huge flood from Storm Daniel. Some have estimated it to be the 300-year event. I will talk a little bit more about this later, but as a way of introduction, I chair the Greek National Science Committee on Climate Change, and part of our work has been to prepare the Greek climate law and the European climate law. One of the things, we started working and we did the Greek climate law 2 years ago, and even as far back as 2 years ago, we could not anticipate, the events that we saw this summer. Coming back to Greece, and what we saw extreme fires. The fire in Rhodos became quite well known because we managed to evacuate about anywhere between 20 or 30,000 people, and there were no deaths. Contrast that to the fire in Maui, in Hawaii, where there was no warning, no evacuation orders, and unfortunately, 115 people died and 300 people are still missing. So we moved from Rhodes, that was this fire that took about almost 10 days to put out, to the other mega fire in northern Greece, in Evros, where unfortunately over 15 people died. They were people that had crossed the border, probably illegally. They didn't know very well. Maybe they were not aware of that there were evacuation orders, but nonetheless, it is a national tragedy that so many people died, and then we moved to Thessaly. So I don't think in Greece or anywhere in Europe we will forget this summer of these extreme events. And I think if there was any person that had any doubts that climate change, that we are actually seeing the effects of climate change, some of the impacts of climate change earlier than we had anticipated, I don't think there's anyone who can doubt that. I have to say here as a scientist that it's very difficult to associate any particular event with climate change, but there's no question that the severity of the events has increased. For example, we know that in the summer the temperature, the water temperature in Greece, increased to record levels. This produced more moisture. So this is probably what caused the extreme rainfall, which broke all records in Greece, and for some people say some of the European records. Probably just to compare it with the rainfall associated with hurricanes that I know very well from my work in the United States, the impact in Thessaly was very much like the impact of the rainfall associated with extreme hurricanes that we see in the southern part of the United States. I want to make one comment about the first item that we're going to talk about, the blurring the lines between anthropogenic and natural disasters. And I will use as an example again the flood in Thessaly. Floodplains are what they are. They are very fertile because rivers flood, and over thousands of years, rivers have had their way to just meander. Meandering is also a Greek word, and change their course, flood, carve their way, inside a floodplain, deposit sediment, which makes the plain very fertile. What makes a disaster? The disaster is made when you try to actually limit the course of a river. You try to put a straitjacket on it and make it straighten it and define its course. And the reason the reason is that, I mean, obviously, when you start building cities, you do not want the rivers to start, flooding the cities. And it is quite clear that the people that, built on floodplains, they were probably not aware of exactly of these natural processes. Now, what we have, and this started in Greece in the 50s, great part of the areas that were flooded now were basically swamps. And the swamps were drained, one, to create agricultural land. This was in the rebuilding of Greece right after the Second World War and the Civil War, and then to control malaria. I've spoken in the last week with engineers, surviving engineers from the time who worked on these works, and they tell me that the orders from were basically proceed as quickly as you can. We need to drain the swamps. There were no plans. I mean, they didn't have any measurements, data. So we create in a way. We made the problem of the flooding, much worse. Had there been swamps there, the extent of the flooding would not have been any worse. But at least we wouldn't have had people and living there. So the interaction, it's people who take a natural, the contribution that we make when we do not plan our public works carefully, when we put in our cities, without considering that, what thousands or tens of thousands of years of natural processes, and we just think that just because we have technological tools and we can build cities, that the cities will be safe forever. Obviously, this was a grand fallacy, and Greece is paying for it right now. And unfortunately, there is no quick end in sight. There is a lot of misery in the people in Thessaly because a lot of people are homeless, a lot of people are away from their homes. Given the way that the Greek system worked, there are no hydrographs, which means that there is no knowledge of how quickly the floodplain will drain. So to add to to all the people's their woes, there is the uncertainty of how quickly they will be able to return back to their homes. This is something that needs to change moving forward. I think it's extremely important that we try to plan ahead and particularly understand how the anthropogenic component. I mean, we know that the climate crisis we're in now is primarily anthropogenic. The next step is understanding how our interventions make this, the impacts of the climate crisis much worse. Thank you.